Hi, this is Steffi and welcome to the FinancialFox Bitcoin series. On the show today, I have Trevor Owens, CEO of NFT Alerts App Ninjalerts and general partner at BTCFrontierFund, through which he has invested in over 50 BTC startups. It took some time to get Trevor on the show. I mean, he's a very busy man, in high demand as well. He's one of the stronger voices in the Bitcoin Ordinals space. And today, finally, we delve deep into the secret of his success, exploring his entrepreneurial journey, the genesis of NFT Alerts app, what he thinks about NFTs, and also his valuable insights into the world of Bitcoin and beyond. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button now and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. Now, let's go straight into my interview with Trevor. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
Good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to have you on. Listen, I want to start asking you a very important question, and you can take the opportunity to introduce yourself as well. So, how you enter the Bitcoin space? Tell us about your journey in Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I got started in Bitcoin initially in 2013 when there was a lot of excitement. It was when Silk Road got taken down, and I think people were very excited about Bitcoin. There was a lot of well-known VCs like Mark Andreessen and Chris Dixon and Naval who were talking about it and beating the drum for Bitcoin. And after that initial run-up, my background is in startups and in Web 2. I spent the next 8 years still focused on Web 2. I didn't get into building startups in Bitcoin again until 2021. I was following everything that was going on from afar. The sort of 2017, 2018 ICO phase was not really something I was interested in because my background is in like lean startup and 0 to 1, and just seeing companies raising, tens of millions of dollars for a white paper was something that seemed not like it was not going to end well. And then in 2021, when I started to pay attention to the space again, I think I was always a bit more interested in the technology applications for blockchain and for Bitcoin. And I understood Bitcoin very well from the beginning. In fact, I wrote an essay about it in 2013 about why it was not going to be a bubble. And I'm pretty proud of that. If you find that essay, a lot of the things hold true to today. And in 2021, that's when I saw the first production levels, consumer software applications for really on Ethereum. So MetaMask, OpenSea, Uniswap. And at that point, it was very clear to me that Web3 was going to be a thing, that there was technology that you couldn't develop in the Web 2 paradigm using Web3 technologies and blockchain. And then I worked my way backwards to Bitcoin again, realizing that these applications could also be developed on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was a far bigger market, far bigger liquidity base, and also had better properties of decentralization that make it more likely to become a globally accepted digital currency. And so I kind of started in Bitcoin. I didn't think the technology was ready or mature. And then when I saw what was happening on Ethereum 2021, it became obvious to me this stuff would happen on Bitcoin and that there was no one focusing on how to apply these use cases and this blockchain technology for these use cases to Bitcoin specifically. And so that's when we started the Bitcoin Frontier Fund, and I went all in on this.
Oh, great. But you're also the CEO of Ninjalerts, which is, well, can we say is an NFT project in a way, or alert like NFT project? So what capture you about NFT to say, right, this is going to be a thing. So, I want to do something. I want to focus on NFT. And then we can also link it with, the recent development in the Bitcoin space and ordinance as well. But I want to get the core of what caught your attention with NFT.
Yeah, so it's very funny. I initially started buying NFTs just because I didn't understand it. I thought it was dumb. And I was like, why are people buying these, cartoon pictures? But it was my job as an investor to understand what's going on and to try things out for myself. And so I actually bought my first Ethereum. I only had Bitcoin before this and some Stacks token because I've known the team for a while, and was very focused just on Bitcoin as an asset. And then when I converted my first Bitcoin to some Ethereum, just enough like I was like ready to lose it. It's like, this is gonna be investing and learning, right? It immediately opened my eyes into how communities can be built differently and how you can align a group of people around a goal or a purpose, right? So I think of the sort of the identity layer of like the PFPs, like if you look at the CryptoPunks, if you look at the Bored Ape Yacht Club, it's really about allowing like creating a tighter knit culture for a group to achieve something. So like if you look in Bored Ape Yacht Club, the mission was all about, people who are building their own personal brand, people who are excited about Ethereum. A lot of people have used their Bored Ape to create different businesses, including some like well-known YouTubers create like a beer brand on Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's kind of this community collaboration behind a brand that Bored Ape has catalyzed. With CryptoPunks, it was like people who were in the 2018 cycle who wanted to support Ethereum development. And so you see a lot of DeFi founders, a lot of NFT founders in the last bull run had a CryptoPunk. And so I was kind of fascinated by how NFTs actually had a use case that I wasn't able to perceive or see until I actually got into it. And then I also saw that trading was really fun. And I never considered myself a trader in the past. I don't really like the momentum trading or short-term trading market swings. I'm a VC, so I'm a very long-term investor. Like typically as a VC, you're going to hold on to an investment for a decade or more until like the IPO, it can be sometimes 15 years, right? So, but I found it to be really fun. It was kind of like, the way that people pitch the NFT projects, it's like there's a team, there's a roadmap. You can see the product, which is the art. You can see the execution. And it was like kind of like fantasy football for VCs in a way in this little ecosystem. And so I actually started making pretty good profits trading, and it became a bit addicting. And I wanted to not be addicted and have more balance in my life. And like the NFT market, it's like 24/7 and things are happening everywhere. So in the Born especially, like I have multiple monitors and I have windows up on every monitor with Etherscan, with Discord, with Twitter, and they're all like refreshing, every 10 seconds. And then like you have to wake up at odd times in the middle of the night to be able to get to a mint. So I just thought that was like not sustainable for me. And so I came up with the idea for Ninja Alerts, which is just like, hey, I know all the top traders because, I've been seeing their addresses on Etherscan. I see them in the different Discord groups and I see them on Twitter. What if I could just get push notifications whenever they make a trade, they mint something, they buy something, sell something, and then in real time, I can participate in the market without having to constantly, refresh and read the page to see if like it's updated and what's going on. And so we applied the lean startup method to our own startup. We interviewed traders. We got a lot of good feedback. We kind of molded the initial idea. We launched a landing page for it initially in a Discord, and then we minted out 1,500 NFTs as licenses. And so I was also very interested in the use case for NFTs as a license to something like a SaaS software, in addition to like a membership kind of token. And so we, built an NFT analytics tool, with an NFT for the NFT audience. And at the same time I was running the fund, I also had a startup team. We were building like education / accelerator software. And then we decided to pivot into Web3 after that.
Yeah, super, super interesting. I think the NFT is kind of like a continuous discovery. And I think there are still questions to be addressed, especially when you talk about sustainability of product and, access, building a community, but then what's next? Because you are creating something that still have to hold value and be tradable. I mean, if that is the point, otherwise it doesn't have to be tradable. It's just going to become something that you put in your wallet as a key that give you access to something. But in any case, I want to go back to Bitcoin because that is going to open another chapter, and I would like to spend another hour talking to you about it. So NFTs on Bitcoin. Obviously, being on Bitcoin allows you to store the data in a different way that is on chain and is off chain, so you can lose your NFT. So there are all different kind of, it's like an upgrade, if we want to call it that way, of your asset. So or maybe you can tell it in a better way. So NFTs, if we want to call it like that, on Bitcoin, what's the added value that you see? Because you are in this space and you know about NFT. You see the opportunity. Why Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think at a basic level, the answer to why Bitcoin is kind of simple. It's because it's Bitcoin. It's the largest network. It has the most number of nodes running. It has the largest liquidity base, the largest user base. And so just the idea of creating any type of new assets on top of Bitcoin is a very compelling one. And with Ordinals, I think that the creator Casey Rodarmor took it even further. He identified some of the limitations or problems with the NFT format on Ethereum, and he set out to solve those. And I think these are things that a lot of us were aware of or saw when we first started getting involved in NFTs on Ethereum, like the idea that you own a token, which is essentially like a certificate pointing to some type of media, but that media can be on a centralized server, or it can be on, IPFS. It's not even on it. Most of the time it's not on Ethereum. And so that, I think, and there's also other complexities related to having a smart contract, like a developer can even change the picture or change the data, or they can also sometimes unilaterally transfer the asset out of your wallet into their wallet. They can pretty much do whatever they want because it's a very flexible program, very flexible smart contract language. And I think that's useful for some situations where you need maximum flexibility. But for most of the valuable NFTs like Bored Ape Yacht Club or CryptoPunk, they don't really have any advanced functionality to them. It's all about the art. It's all about the community and profile picture. And so, probably 80% or more of the value is just in the art and the community that's created, and not necessarily having a smart contract. And so with Ordinals, Casey created a format where every single image is stored on Bitcoin. You cannot put the image on a centralized server. You cannot put the image on IPFS. And that makes it more durable in terms of if you want to collect something that's going to be valuable, like you want to pass on your CryptoPunk to, your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter for generations to come, because maybe this becomes a historically significant piece of art. The idea that Bitcoin will be here in 100 years, I think, and in a current compatible structure with how the NFTs are created, I think resonates with people more so than IPFS or an external server. And in fact, we saw this with Counterparty early on. A lot of the NFTs were created on Bitcoin to begin with Counterparty, but a lot of those use links to centralized servers, and now you find a ton of NFTs where the images are gone after, just 4 or 5 years later. And so something like, I read a stat, I think it was something like 97% of links end up becoming dead over the span of a few years. I have to find the exact stat, but a shockingly large number of links end up expiring in terms of there's no content there anymore. And so by having that on a centralized server or, IPFS, IPFS, I think it'll last a lot longer, but I'm just not sure. And I think most people get into NFTs on Ethereum not really knowing what they're buying, because there's so many different ways it can be done. But with Ordinals, it can only be done one way. There's no smart contract. Everything is on Bitcoin. And if you just want to be able to have the image and the certificate, and you don't need any type of staking or something that you need a smart contract for, then I think Ordinals is the optimal solution.
So basically you are saying that the main use case for Bitcoin NFT is collectibles.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else perhaps that could be contemplated as the Bitcoin ecosystem develop? Will there be other use cases that maybe could become relevant, you think?
Well, this is the thing about Ordinals, is that it's not just a product, but it's actually a new paradigm. And so when you think about Ordinals and you think, these are Bitcoin NFTs, if you look deeper, what you'll see is that it's not just that Casey found a way to put NFTs on Bitcoin. He actually found and proved a new paradigm of building applications on Bitcoin, which people had previously not recognized or not considered. And so we're finding that, now building on Bitcoin, that there's a lot of opportunities to build applications that we had never previously considered. And the way that they're being done without smart contracts, but instead by almost like a file system, introduces interesting new use cases as well. Because, for example, we have people who are uploading entire JavaScript libraries onto Bitcoin, and then they're uploading more data that then calls those JavaScript libraries to create new art. And people had considered doing that on Ethereum, but just the way that the architecture works, it didn't really make sense and it was difficult to do. But on Bitcoin, these type of use cases are very easy to do. And so now it creates a whole new path for developers and artists to build things that they literally wouldn't build on Ethereum, in addition to building a different type of NFT.
I think it's very interesting because even we hear more and more people talking about tokenization of assets. I mean, they are talking even in financial markets now. So it has become a thing, right? And that seems like that exactly what you're saying with the ordinals creating a new paradigm. Tokenization on Bitcoin could actually be a thing.
100%. And I mean, so one of the things that none of us expected was this protocol called BRC20. And so BRC20 is the equivalent of ERC20 on Bitcoin. And it took the paradigm that Casey came up with even further. And by even further, I mean even higher risk, and showed that it was be possible. And so we have seen that major centralized exchanges like OKX, like crypto.com have integrated BRC20s into them, which is something that like I would have never predicted coming into this. So, and we've had, Michael Saylor talk about how you could tokenize, stocks on Bitcoin, and there is that kind of institutional interest on Bitcoin that you don't see as much of on Ethereum, where you could imagine, new types of securities even being put on Bitcoin. It's not something that I am really like super excited about or focus on, but if it happens, I'm super excited about it because the more assets we can put on chain, I think the more value this technology can bring to the world.
Right, I'm going to ask you here, I want to ask you the difficult question. It's a very interesting question. So there is a battle. There is a controversy between Maxi and forward thinkers or people, they want to see innovation on Bitcoin. What's your message to the maximalists?
Yeah, I mean, my message is that Bitcoin is permissionless and that it's a network that you can't stop anyone from using. You know what I mean? And the thing that's interesting is that Ordinals doesn't change the Bitcoin base layer protocol. Ordinals adds another protocol on top of it, which brings more users, brings more value, brings more fees to miners. And it does so in a way that doesn't actually affect or make any trade-off with how Bitcoin functions today. And so I think the people who are upset about it are more upset about something that they've been emotionally attached to, and that a lot of it is psychology more so than it is like anything rational. And I think that in a few years, like this kind of drama between the laser eye maxis, as we call them, and the ordinal maxis will just be gone. And in fact, I think probably most of the new users coming in, as we've seen with Ethereum, majority of people in this new wave who came into the crypto space came in through NFTs, because traditionally crypto appeals to people who are into economics, finance, fintech, not even software developers are interested in consumer products like myself, there's less of them coming into the blockchain. But now that NFTs open this connection to art, to music, to entertainment, art and music are the most popular things in the world, right? Like, try to find somebody who doesn't like music, right? And the idea that you can merge these industries together with blockchain, it has much more consumer appeal. So I think that Ordinals is only going to grow, and that for those people who don't like it, well, there's nothing they can do about it. And if anything, they have more to gain by opening their mind to how Bitcoin may not change in terms of the base protocol, but the culture and the demographic of Bitcoin 100% is going to change. It has to, in order for us to be a technology that reaches the adoption of billions of people, right? So I think a lot of people who got upset about it is because they tie Bitcoin as a technology too close to their identity, and they're attached to a certain way of what Bitcoin culture is, who's a Bitcoiner, et cetera. But if Bitcoin's going to be as ubiquitous as water, then it's going to represent the culture of the entire world. And I think we need to welcome new people and different people into the ecosystem with open arms.
Yeah, 100%. And we need to develop this ecosystem as well to make sure there is more than just payments now. So it seems like ordinals are creating a common ground between Ethereum and Bitcoin for now, and eventually they are creating something that goes beyond Ethereum. Do you see Bitcoin being the one, I don't want to use the word crypto here because it seems that it's getting more and more bad connotation. I don't know if you agree with me, but do you see Bitcoin being, the currency, being the digital assets that will have longevity, and the others, they slowly gonna be, disappear or lose relevance? Or do you see maybe a multi-chain future? How do you see the future looking like?
I mean, I definitely see a multi-chain future. I think that even at a fundamental level, Bitcoin cannot scale to billions of users. Like it can't even scale, beyond tens of millions of like active users on a monthly basis because the block space is so scarce. And so Bitcoin, the layer one Bitcoin, will be relegated to very high value transactions. You can think of it almost like banks or countries, settling differences between billions of dollars. Like eventually, if we're to reach mass adoption, no common person will ever use the Bitcoin base layer. And so, we have to have multiple different scaling layers, which will be different blockchains, whether they're ZK rollups or, Lightning is a separate network. It's a messaging network which exchanges unsigned transactions or unpublished transactions between different users. So there's going to be a rich ecosystem of different technologies around Bitcoin. And I think Ethereum will still be around. I think that Bitcoin will be the dominant chain because I think network effects are very hard to supplant. And I also think that it has an origin story that cannot be replicated. Like what the whole story of Satoshi Nakamoto and the fact that he's gone and everything, and there's no leader. That's a miracle. Like that's, it's like almost biblical, the story behind Bitcoin, right? And so with other chains, I think it's very important and very healthy that there are experiments and failures and learnings. And it's a good thing for Bitcoin that we have Ethereum. It's a good thing for Ethereum we have Solana, et cetera. And I see that in the future, I don't think it'll be like, I think that what is the definition of multi-chain? Like, I think that there will be a very few small number of base layers. And then I think most of the layers will be like layers on top of Bitcoin, layers on top of Ethereum, or that everything will start to coalesce more and become more integrated in terms of like Bitcoin and Ethereum being the dominant networks. And so ultimately you need to have blockchains that are different, right? Like Ethereum is different from Bitcoin. Solana is different from Ethereum. The more different they are, the more valuable they are because they can solve a different problem. Yeah. And so that's how I view the future evolving. I don't know like how many of these current proof of stake, there's like so many layer one proof of stake chains, that have like a small difference to them. I don't think that that's going to be enough to separate them from others. But when I look at like Bitcoin being extremely decentralized, but also slow and also very expensive, then you see Ethereum being, full programmability and a little bit faster than Bitcoin, or actually quite a bit faster technically, and also expensive. Then you have Solana being like very centralized, but also very fast. The fact that they take these different approaches is really good. And at this point, like none of these technologies are honestly really competing with each other because none of them have gotten enough adoption. Like we're at a level where, the entire space is maybe 200 million users, right? And so right now it's like we're all trying to onboard the entire market. Like there's not really, like we haven't even captured the market yet. So I don't even think that these different platforms compete with each other until we've reached market saturation of like billions of users. Now that there's a limited market size, now they start to compete with each other a little bit more, but since they'll be specialized, it won't kind of consolidate into whatever use cases that they're best at.
How long do you think we need? How many years do you think we are behind this to happen, to have more adoption of digital assets?
It's so hard to say. I mean, it feels like a long way. I mean, but things can change rapidly, right? So if you look at, let's say that the space has 200 million users, I mean, it's been 13 years, right, since Bitcoin first was introduced. You can compare that to other disruptive technology. Like the example I always used to like to use is Pokemon Go. The mobile app that you could use augmented reality, like the first augmented reality game, that had 500 million users after 3 months. So that's like, and the truth is that Bitcoin is much more disruptive than an augmented reality game, and that there's still a lot of barriers to adoption in terms of, there's no integration with Apple, there's no, there's a lot of things to solve. But I think that things tend to go into waves of 4 years with the halving. That's what we've seen traditionally. And it seems like the space tends to, grow by a significant percentage, so it's kind of like an exponential function every 4 years. But these type of things are very impossible to predict. I mean, I would hope that in 10 years, we're at a very different place than we are now, that maybe we're at 1 billion users in 10 years, I think would be something to strive for. Or honestly, if we would work together more, and there was less tribalism in the space, we could get there in 3 to 5 years. But the way I see it now, there's so much sort of even maintenance of the status quo in our own ecosystem.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. We should be working more together. We should communicate more, and perhaps even regulation could play a very important role if we can have, more clear guidelines, know how to do business in the space. So maybe next year, regulation and governments can play a significant role in this adoption. Now, I want to go back to investing in the Bitcoin ecosystem because, you are a general partner of the BTC FrontierFund. You have invested in over, I think, how many businesses, how many startups have you invested in Bitcoin?
More than 50 at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's significant. So tell us a little bit what's going on. What kind of what developers are building on? What are the main project that you see? This is what is needed. This is what is going to be successful in the next 5 years. Where are the trends? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest trends, of course, is NFTs on Bitcoin. So a lot of our companies, like you mentioned, you've interviewed Xverse, Ken, the founder of Xverse. He's a founder that we invested in. And you know, Brian from Ordinals bought, we're an investor in his company as well. So Ordinals is a very exciting trend. Bitcoin DeFi is coming. That's going to be, I think, a big trend towards the end of this year. And people are building all kinds of cool stuff. It's really about the exploration phase right now. And it's also about figuring out what Bitcoin can do better or different than Ethereum. Not everything needs to be better than Ethereum, but if there's a way to make it better than Ethereum on Bitcoin, whoever figures that out will be a massive success. And so we're still in primarily the infrastructure phase. So the teams that are succeeding right now are not building the things that Ethereum developers are trying to figure out. Like if you look in the market at the proven use cases, Ethereum is kind of at a plateau where there's a lot of developers trying to figure out what's next. We figure out digital pictures. How do we figure out digital music? How do we figure out digital movies? And they're trying to figure that out. And that's not the place, I think, to play in if you're in Bitcoin right now. Maybe it is, but I think that you need to have a good insight on the technology to why it would make more sense on Bitcoin than on Ethereum. Otherwise, it's all low-hanging fruit. It's all saying what has been proven in the market elsewhere that we can bring to a bigger market, right? It's the old days of Marco Polo and the Silk Road, bringing innovation from one country and culture to another, which is how Europe found gunpowder and pasta and so many other things that people don't realize. And in fact, actually, it was, Marco Polo, I believe it was, or, the traders on the Silk Road, they discovered gunpowder in China because they're using it for fireworks. And then the Europeans were the ones who said, hey, we can point these things at each other. You know what I'm saying? And that's how they created guns. So, that kind of cross collaboration, I think, is really important for the space to go forward.
So I also heard the Marco Polo brought pasta as well to the Western. And anyway, what would be your advice to people or to founders that are looking to build on Bitcoin?
Yeah, my advice to founders is probably, most of the advice I have for founders is usually independent of where they build, right? I think as a founder, you have to be highly focused and you have to be highly adaptable. You can't get attached to an idea. You also have to build the best team you can. When you're building a startup, the level of the first three people on your team, ideally 3 co-founders, will dictate all of the future potential trajectory of the company, right? And so for founders who are just starting out, one of the best investments that you can make is just in finding the right co-founders for your team. And testing out how you work together, because a lot of teams fail because of founder conflict. And then the second thing is the lean startup method. So, validating your product before you build it, talking to users, searching for product market fit, being adaptable. That's the second most important thing. And then when it comes to building on Bitcoin, I always advise founders to try to build from layer 1 up. So there's many platforms that are coming up like Stacks, for example, which offers robust smart contracts as a layer on top of Bitcoin. We're going to have ZK ropes maybe in the future. That's going to require a change to Bitcoin itself. So that might take, 3 to 6 years. But, you can also even bring assets from Bitcoin to Ethereum. We saw that with Ordinals very early on. One of the most successful collections was CryptoPunks on Bitcoin. They took the art from Ethereum, they inscribed it on Bitcoin, and then they bridged it over to Ethereum and sold it on OpenSea. And so I think that you want to think in that way, where that you can utilize the smart contracts of chains, not just Bitcoin, but that the assets or some of the core functionality is built into Bitcoin layer 1, because the closer you can get to the Bitcoin layer 1, the more competitive that you'll be in the market. And so I always advise an L1 up strategy. So even though Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, you can try to stretch that paradigm as far as you can, but then, maybe it ends up being like a 20-80 rule, where like 20% of the functionality is on Bitcoin L1 and 80% is on other layers that have advanced smart contracts.
That's fantastic advice. Now, what's up with the pizza? What's the pizza? I'm Italian. I love pizza. But what's all these things with the pizza? I remember I was talking to Toby and he was telling me, oh, I need to do this video. I need to do the pizza. And then you go on Twitter and you see all these ninja with the pizza. It was fun to watch. But tell me what's behind the pizza.
Yeah. So, one of the cool things about Bitcoin Ordinals is that the art is inscribed on a Satoshi. So it's inscribed on the currency, essentially. You can think of it like, some people compare it to taking gold and melting it, making it into jewelry. I like to compare it to those little there was like these penny machines at the museum where you put the penny in and you put in some quarters and you crank it and it makes a little like artwork out of the penny. And so because of this, you can actually observe the entire history of the currency that you are inscribing on. And so you can imagine, it's like having a dollar bill that was like signed by, some historical figure like Ben Frank. I don't know if they had the same paper. They probably don't have the same paper dollars back then, but you get the idea, like Ben Franklin or George Washington or, JFK. It could be a famous president in the US. Like, you can track the history of that item of currency all the way back to the beginning of the blockchain. And in the same way, this came up with this concept of rare, exotic, and vintage Satoshis. And so rare Satoshis is this idea of a model that Casey Rodarmor created, where the first sat in every block is an uncommon Satoshi. The first sat in every difficulty adjustment, which is like what happens every 2 weeks, is a rare Satoshi. The first one in every halving is a epic Satoshi. And so it's like different rarity based on the key events in the Bitcoin timeline, or the time chain, as we say. And then the idea of exotic sats are ones that have some type of historical significance. So pizza sats are sats that were part of the historic 10,000 BTC for 2 pizzas transaction. So every year there's Bitcoin Pizza Day, and this is to celebrate what was the first use of Bitcoin to buy something, like to buy anything. There's some speculation or maybe something earlier, but this is the first purchase that's been confirmed, and also the first purchase that would be for something like in the real world as opposed to something digital. So people celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day every year, and it's kind of funny because it was 10,000 BTC was like $50 back then to get 2 pizzas, and now it's $300 million. So it's always like a good reminder about how Bitcoin has come over the years. And also, like, everybody loves pizza. Like, developers love pizza. Like, Italians love pizza. Who doesn't love Americans? New Yorkers love pizza. Who doesn't love pizza? And you think back to like the nature of human history. Like, it first came agriculture, right? And then came bread, and then came civilization. Like, cities, like agriculture and bread, and like people say, breaking bread is how you like kick off a relationship with somebody. It's how people who have disagreements reconcile their disagreements. Like, this idea of like bread and family and pizza and bringing people together, along with Bitcoin's history, got me thinking about, Ninja Alerts. And growing up, I was a big fan of Ninja Turtles, and they loved pizza. And so it just seemed like ninjas and pizza would be a good combo together. And one of the things that the Ordinals community has done differently is that they have had these like video competitions where it's like you need to make a video doing something in order to get the allow list, to be the option to mint. And so that's been like really successful. Udi did it with Taproot Wizards. We said you make a video wearing a wizard costume and taking a shower. And then, that was pretty fun. So we didn't want to do the same thing. I didn't think much about it, but when we announced it, like, people really got excited about it. And we had something like 600 to 700 videos already posted on Twitter, people eating pizza in a ninja costume. And I think there's a lot of symbolism behind it, but more importantly, for someone creating a project, it's a way to filter out the people who are maybe short-term traders and don't really care that much about the community that you're building and identify those people who do really care, because that's the single most important factor of long-term success, I think, for these NFT communities and ordinal communities is how do you establish that initial distribution? And actually, ironically, it's the same thing that was the most important factor for Bitcoin's success, right? Is that what makes it the potential to be a global digital currency is that there was no pre-mine, right? So, I think if you're a startup and you need to do R&D, I think it's actually, if you can, it makes sense to sell a token to investors so you can raise the capital you need. I don't see any issue with that. I only see an issue with it when it comes to being a global digital currency, as opposed to something more like a stock. And so I think the reason why Bitcoin has been winning as a store of value and as a potential future form of money is because of that initial distribution, how they distribute it, and how that original community formed. And so this is something that I think was a lot of fun for us, and the videos are awesome. And we're doing this as a company because I believe that every future business, if they can create a strong community that has that's the purpose of NFTs and these profile pictures, is that you can create a community behind a brand that you can unite those early adopters, because if you have the right early adopters that are right early distribution, it'll be extremely hard for anyone to compete with you. And so we're doing this because we think this is the future way of building companies, is to create a very strong community-based business. And in a world where information can move so quickly, something can get 1 million impressions on Twitter in a few hours. Having that community, I think, is not only defensible, but it is the best marketing that you can ever get.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was a great chat.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.